I'm going to be live on the air in about 40 minutes. And I'm just going through my final bit of show prep. And I'm going to open today talking about the JFK files. So you guys here early get a little sneak peek because obviously the files are overwhelming. I mean, there's 80,000 files. They're in PDF format. I mean, how long would it take just to download all those PDF files, right? A week, two, I don't know, and then read through them. But people are going through them, and a lot of people are going through them that are internet sleuths and armchair historians and people like that. And this is what I want to lead with today on the show at 6. So you guys get a little sneak peek. But there's a common theme there was one thing I learned that was completely new so far, which I'll tell you in a minute. But there's a common theme throughout all of these JFK files. And you got to understand, these files, they're interviewing people at the time and shortly after. And this suspicion of government that we all have today and distrust of government really didn't start until later in the 60s and in the 70s with the Vietnam anti-war movement. So a lot of these files and statements are, no, it's not in the past. We're living through it today. It's very important stuff. And a lot of these statements were made before this era of distrust of everything from the government. But a common theme throughout everything we've heard so far from the JFK files is CIA, CIA, CIA. And that's a constant through all of it, isn't it? And the thing with, because I know a lot of people, like somebody already said, well, it's in the past. What's the relevance of it today? It validates everything that we know Trump has been going through. That, yeah, MK Ultra and all this. There's this intelligence apparatus that thinks this is their country, and they run it, and they do whatever they want. And they killed President Kennedy because he got in their way, which is crazy because a president is only president 4 years, 8 years at best. But they're so arrogant and full of themselves, and they're just so right that 4 or 8 years, and his reelection was not a sure deal. You know, I know people think that now, but you know, JFK is put on a pedestal because of his assassination. He may have won, maybe, probably, but we never really know. So we know that now, according to these files, CIA was behind the whole thing. We also know the CIA killed Bobby for sure. Bobby Kennedy's talked a lot about this, how his father, Bobby Kennedy's own bodyguard, shot him to death, shooting him in the back, who was a CIA operative. So the CIA killed both Kennedys. And I think most Americans agree that our own government shot President Trump in Butler and certainly was behind it at the golf course with that guy with the Ukrainian connections and everything. In fact, the guy was in Ukraine. The guy that tried to shoot Trump at the golf course was in Ukraine, recruiting American mercenaries to fight for Ukraine. And he had a photograph in Ukraine with that celebrity chef that Biden appointed to an organization, remember? So it really shows you that all this, what's really truly behind the lawfare against Trump. Now, one thing that I learned that put some pieces together is there's witnesses in these new files that saw Lee Harvey Oswald in a nightclub AI can be used to summarize the files. I would not agree with that. I wouldn't trust AI to summarize the files. Okay, who's behind the AI? Would you try? No, no. We need humans humans. I don't trust AI. The AIs are very, very PC and liberal. You can't know. I know everybody's saying that, but I would not trust it. Now, my name's Brian. This is where Maggot comes to talk. If you're new to my channel, make sure that you subscribe, all right? Now, the worst thing you could do is trust AI. But anyway, there were witnesses that saw Oswald at a nightclub, and I'm sorry, guys. I'm behind on my coffee. And I got to get my throat ready to broadcast with Jack Ruby. So Jack Ruby and Oswald were at a nightclub together. Also, CIA started setting Oswald up in New Orleans. Some of these things we suspected, but they're being confirmed. But there's a lot of names that are previously unknown. I've seen some of the JFK amateur historians talk about how there's a lot of names here we've never seen before. So it may take years to go through it and start identifying some of them because a lot of them have code names. But there's a constant through the whole thing. CIA, CIA, CIA. It's through the entire thing. And CIA killed Bobby. I mean, you know. Now, over the years, who controls the deep state and different agencies may have changed and developed. Who knows? Because they got more focused on domestic than international, it seems, in the last few years. But the files are amazing and giving us all kinds of nuggets. So that's what I'm going to open with today. There's a lot to cover, though. There's a lot to cover, and your phone calls. No, do not trust AI. The grassy knoll of AI, exactly. There's a lot in the files about what a bad shot Oswald was, which is also very interesting. I've never heard that before because he was in the Marines and they say, oh, he was a Marine, he was a rifleman, and all that. Yeah, so it turns out that Oswald was not a good shot. And the shot between him and the governor, between Kennedy and the governor, were too quick for him to, with a bolt action rifle, get the other shot ready. There's just no way. So a lot's come out with these files already. Yeah, I'll talk about the splashdown yesterday, the president's phone call with Putin. There's a lot to cover today. There's not a shortage of things to discuss. That is for sure. That's for sure. Just nonstop things to talk about today. And take your calls. Make sure you call in. And you're welcome to challenge me. I don't mind if you challenge me, give me a hard time. I can defend my positions, no problem. And maybe I'm wrong about something, although I can't imagine. It's a constant thing. We're still, the same people that got Kennedy have been after Trump for the last 10 years. So it's very important. Very, very important. You know, Kennedy opposed the military-industrial complex. He was going to withdraw from Vietnam, and the day after he was killed, Lyndon Johnson increased our military presence in Vietnam. Exactly, Jules. Very, very true. Very true. That's right. Multiple people saw him in that lunchroom. J-Spot 51 didn't think of what? But it's, no. When the experts start going through these files over the next weeks, months, and years, they'll make all kinds of connections between people. Why would it not be on? No, I'm going to be on live. Absolutely. I just finished my show prep a little early. I got up early today to do my show prep. I'm getting better organized. Now, I will say, I don't know if I'll talk about this on the radio, because I don't know if it's relevant to the radio audience or not, but my podcast last night was about Jeremy Boring at the Daily Wire being fired. in the future of Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. And if you missed that podcast, go check it out. I get into all the details of it. The Daily Wire is on the verge of collapse. They're going to fade away. They are most definitely going to fade away. Yeah, throat check, that's right. I got to get my instrument ready. Well, I talk a lot. All these YouTube live streams, the radio, my podcast, production work that I do for the show. So my throat is not up to its normal. One of the reasons I do these live streams early before the show, it gets my voice prepared to be on the air. Well, they fired Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO, and he founded the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro. They go way back. And, you know, they took those two hits. Candace Owens was a big blow to the Daily Wire. You know, they have very high budget, very high-end budget, and they lost so many views and subscribers to their platforms with Candace. And then Brett Cooper, the Brett Cooper was the final blow, is kind of a way to look at it. And I had no idea how popular Brett Cooper was. And when Brett Cooper left after Candace, and then that crap they did with her producer Reagan, it was a big financial blow. It's always about the money, but they're never Trumpers at the Daily Wire. At least Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring are. And they're in trouble. I would not be surprised if it gets sold. You know, the new media, they get too big. Now, they're never Trumpers, okay? But these new media outlets get too big. You know, I would never want to be that big. You know, I like to be bigger, but not that big. You get that big, they get too much overhead, and boom. The big miscalculation. They survived Candace Owens because when Candace Owens left, she started this anti-Israel thing. So as much damage as Candace Owens' firing did to the Daily Wire, they got through it because of that. But the Brett Cooper firing and the way they handled it, or not, they didn't fire Brett Cooper, but her contract was up. She didn't renew it. They lost her. The hit from Brett Cooper and the way they handled it with the bringing in her producer to take over, it was a bad blow. It was a bad blow to the Daily Wire, and they're not going to survive it. Just like the Blaze with Glenn Beck. He got too big and out of control, too much overhead, and he had to get bailed out. But the Daily Wire is going to fade away. It's most definitely going to fade away. And Ben Shapiro, you know, one of the things I was talking about on my podcast last night, Ben Shapiro's popularity is artificial. They have spent, from the beginning, many millions of dollars on promotion. And what they do with that money, with their online promotion, they spend millions of dollars putting Ben Shapiro on the top of everyone's feed and recommendations on every podcast platform, every social media platform. And his artificial inflation of popularity is going to start to fade away because they're obviously in a bad financial position. That's why they got rid of Jeremy Boring. So they're not spending that money on Ben Shapiro's promotion that they used to, and that'll continue to decline. I mean, Ben Shapiro is not a likable guy. He is a very you know, you can be a mouthy jerk and be a popular personality. There has to be some aspect of you that's likable, and Ben Shapiro is just not a likable guy. No one likes Ben Shapiro. I agree with Ben Shapiro on his positions on Israel, but I don't like him. I think he's difficult and impossible to listen to. He talks too fast. He's uninteresting. He's very self-important. He's just unlikable. And well, the reason Ben Shapiro started fading away is because they weren't flooding all that money to promote him. He got bad publicity with Brett Cooper and Candace, and they're not spending all that money to promote him. He never really was popular. It's all fake. And that's starting to be seen. That's why I've been talking about this in the last few weeks. before this happened, I knew something was up because they were at the State of the Union, Jeremy Boring, Ben Shapiro, and their crew, and they obviously donated money to some congressman to get that invite. And the reason they went to the State of the Union is so that they could look like they were players, like they're in the loop, which they're not. They're never Trumpers. And then they had a whole panel discussion with all their personalities on stage at the same time at CPAC a few weeks ago. And none of them are likable. Michael Knowles is a creep. I think he's very creepy. While he's talking to these only fangirls and things, very creepy. He thinks he's a big man with his cigar and his girly hand. It's just bizarre. And that's most likely at CPAC, a paid thing where you get to go on stage at CPAC just to look like they're relevant and in the mix and popular. And both of those instances, I talked about them at the time, it looked desperate for relevancy. And now Jeremy Boring's out. Now I know they're saying he's still there, and that's all BS. That's all BS. Now, if you're new to my channel, make sure that you subscribe. This is where MAGA comes to talk. So they're going to fade away. And what happens, who knows? I'll tell you another one. Dan Bongino, they replaced Dan Bongino on his radio show and podcast with this Vince guy. And I listened to some of the first episode, and it was not interesting. He just did a sit down with Tucker. And, I like Tucker Carlson, but he didn't really have anything new, you know what I mean? And the guy just is not much of a personality. I know there were people had contacted me to be they wanted me to, you should be the replacement for Bongino. I agree. I should have been the replacement for Bongino. This guy, though, that I've seen him as a guest before, maybe on Bongino somewhere. He's vaguely familiar, this Vince character. But it said on the Bongino's company sent out a press release. He's a regular guest or contributor to Bongino. Very mild personality, and I didn't find it very interesting that on his first show he would just do this sit down with Tucker. It just not much excitement. It was like the exact opposite of Bongino. And I had a few people contact me that were making some contacts to try to get me to be the Bongino replacement. I told them, I said, guy, they've already got that picked. And the reason being is this guy works for Bongino's company. So Bongino's making like $5 million a year. He walked away from to take this deputy directorship of the FBI. So his company, they're trying to keep everything going. So they brought in this guy who's a mediocre personality, couldn't even hold a candle to Bongino because they got control of him. But I can't imagine that's going to last. You need more than okay. They should have used me. I mean, I take live calls from anyone, totally unvetted. All the calls are 100% unvetted. You call me on the show, it is unvetted. You call, no one answers the phone. I just put you on hold, and I take them in the order in which they were received. No one does that. And it's not an easy thing to do. The reason people don't do it is they don't have the skill set to do it. I know it seems easy to you guys, but I've been doing it a long time. When I first started over 30 years ago, if you would have heard me then, some of you may have been listening back, you'd see how it's not all that easy to take the live screenless calls. And it's risky too, because people don't do it because it's risky. Most people that do shows like me, they're afraid somebody will ask them something they don't know the answer to. That's fine. I can handle it. And, it's not easy. I make it look easy, but it's not. And no one does that. And if I would have, if they would have tapped me, if they would have hired me to be the Bongino replacement, which they should have done. And if this guy fails, they should reach out to me. I would not have a guest on the first episode. I would I would go on the air and do a show like I would normally do and open up the phones to the unvetted open phones and have no one answering them, just put them on hold just like I do now. No one does that. And you know what? No one is because it's not easy and it's risky. You never know what people are going to say. You never, even though open phones is only on Friday, you still don't know what people are going to bring up. And you have to be ready. I have to be ready to talk about any and everything when people call in. Totally screenless, unvetted. So, like all you trolls in there, you can call me on the air. Well, I appreciate it, Katina. I would have very much liked to have been the Bongino replacement, but, it didn't work out that way. Several people contacted me to represent me to do that. So there were people that wanted me to do it, but this was already decided. They knew from day one they were going to use this guy. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate. Well, I try to do a mix. A lot of people also that do shows, it's the same thing with the same background every time, and I try to mix it up so you don't get the same thing, right? Like now, this is kind of a little casual thing. I'll be on the air in 15 minutes or so, and that, a little different. I got the podcast, give you a little, difference. No, and some of the people that contacted me, they were serious. They wanted to represent me as like an agent. A few people that contacted me in exchange for a percentage of the deal, which I would be millions of dollars. So but they wanted this guy here with their and I understand. His company, they want to keep control of it because they want to keep the money. So this guy has already been working for them. He works he's an employee of Bongino's production company, so they think they're going to be able to keep the money. They'll keep the money they make, but this guy is not going to generate the enthusiasm that I would have. That's for sure. And certainly that Bongino was. But it'd be interesting when Bongino's done being the deputy director of the FBI, will he return to that? Or will he retire? What would be your guess? What would be your guess? I knew they had made a decision a while back. And some of the people that contacted me that wanted to represent me are serious dudes. But yeah, it was already decided. I'd never get any sleep. Well, I would have to not do as much. If a job like that, I'd be making a lot of money. I wouldn't have to do as much as I'm doing, and I would it would have been perfect because if they would have tapped me, I would have done the radio show, the national radio show from from our radio station. And we've got top facilities there. It would have been perfect. There's several studios there, including a podcast studio. But it didn't work out that way. Okay, well, that's the way it is. I would have very much liked to have gotten that gig. I really would have. In fact, one of the things I would have liked about it is on the radio, I would be up against Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. I think that I would clean Clay Travis and Buck Sexton's clock in every market. I think I would blow them out of the water. No, without any concerns, and I would have picked up stations, but it didn't happen for me. Maybe next time. That level is a club, and obviously I'm not part of that club, and again, do I really want to be a part of that club? Yeah. In some ways, yes. Some ways, no. I mean, the crap I got to deal with now at my level. Well, when when you get to these higher levels like that, you're a little bit removed. No, I'm doing very well. I'm not complaining, but I would have been the most definite perfect replacement for Bongino. I've been to Mar-a-Lago. Yes, I have. Because he is a dictator. Zelensky is a dictator. All right, guys, listen, I got to run. I got to go get set up and be on the air. I'll be on the air in about 12 to 15 minutes, okay? And I'll start the new stream. I'll see you there. Take care.